Nothing surprises me again in Nigeria regarding that gathering on that day. But I'm happy that we came full circle regarding the truth about the winner of the election known as the June 12th presidential election in 1993. We should not be calling for justice. We should be applying justice at this time. Calling for justice means that we haven't decided whether justice should happen or not. We should be working at this time. People should be facing trial. We should be preparing them to face trial for the humongous, monumental crime against the Nigerian people, which is unarguably treason. The treason was committed in 1993 by former dictator Babangida and his friends. Some of them are civilians, some of them are in the military. Some have died and some are still alive. But the ones that are still alive, led by Babangida, should be cooling their feet behind bars by now. This type of crime does not have limitation in terms of when somebody can be punished for it. It can happen at any time. He should have been behind bars since the completion of the annulment of the election. But they planned it so carefully, and he has said it so many times that they weren't going to hand over power. You had played some of the clips of footage of when he was in this disheveled military uniform where he was saying that there were electoral malpractices. But I think for the first time in the history of the country, he didn't just take responsibility, he confessed to having annulled a free and fair election. And that point makes it more cogent for him to be arrested. And, with all other persons that he mentioned or didn't mention in his book, and the trial should have commenced. Yes, the problem is that there was no justice system then, and there's still no justice system now that could have brought him, that could administer justice. That's the only problem, because the people who ought to arrest him and try him for these crimes were also at the book launch clapping for him, unfortunately. So we found ourselves in the boat calling ourselves pro-democracy activists. But those of us who knew what was going on understood that some people were just opportunists who capitalized on June 12th to make a showing of their love for democracy, but they didn't really like democracy. They don't believe in democracy. And President Bola Tinubu is one of those people. I have said it repeatedly, who really never fought for democracy. They fought for Abiola to become president so that they can be part of, the booty sharing process. But they never really, we fought for democracy. We were the ones who went to jail. Were the ones who were expelled from the university. Some of us were nearly killed. There are people who were killed, and Tinubu wasn't one of those people. Yes, occasionally has skirmishes with them as they disagreed on this, but you'll be surprised that they probably facilitated his departure from the country as well. So, and people like Kayode Fayemi, all these people that attended the election, they were friends of these guys. Some of them were probably moles that were planted by the military in the midst of the pro-democracy movement to sell us out. And time and time again has proven these people to be really not genuine. And I want to just give you an instance that after the military left power in 1999, I moved to the US. And these characters, Tinubu, Segun Oshoba, and the rest of them, came and got an award for Abdul Salami Abubakar. Guess where? At the Chicago State University, the controversial university where Tinubu supposedly graduated. And we went there and confronted them, and we were shocked that no one of them, with that exception of the so-called Nadeko people, were in attendance. So that showed that they maintain constant relationship with the military, even though they claim to be fighting the military. Do not also forget that it was during that period that he supposedly was fighting against the military, that whole drug issue was also happening in 1993. So you can put two and two together and understand who was fighting against the military and who was doing other things. Don't forget that these are the kind of people who came to power. And just last year, they arranged, underage kids for treason. People who arrange underage kids for treason cannot arrest and arraign people who actually committed treason. Shows to you that we're doomed. And secondly, you have to punish people when they commit this kind of egregious crimes. That is the standard globally. People who participated in Nazism are still being punished, even when they're 100 years old. People who engaged in bombing churches in 1963 in Alabama are still being punished in the US. So this is just 32 years ago. And I'm not saying it because I want to sound vindictive, but it is the right thing to do because lives were lost. This country was robbed of its opportunity to have made strides, developmental, progressive, democratic strides, and possibly even economic development. And we threw all that away, and somebody wrote a book. Instead of arresting him at the book launch, you then contributed 17 billion naira to him to set up a presidential library when he was never a president of Nigeria. How can you set up a presidential library? Presidential library are supposed to be set up by people who are democratically elected, not people who commit treason or crimes. Babangida is a liar. He is a born liar. This is what he's ever done in his life. He's never told the truth, and he will never tell you the truth. You heard him saying he cared about Abiola's life. Somebody who cared about Abiola's life would not have killed his closest friend, who was his best man, Mama Vatsa, for planning a phantom coup. He would not have killed a journalist with a Pasu bomb. That we're talking about Delegiwa, who was killed in 1986. He would not have killed so many people that died at his behest or at his hands. So he's just lying. Nobody pressed anything against him. They planned this out from the beginning that they were not going to hand over power. It didn't start with even Abiola. It started with the transition program itself, which they started announcing since 1990 that they were going to hand over. And we were part of this. That was what led us to organize Babangida Must Go protest in 1992, which led to my first expulsion from the university. He wasn't planning to hand over power. He was trying to transmute. He wanted to become a civilian president, having loved the presidency so much that he even labeled himself military president. He even introduced a diarchy in which he had the National Assembly elected and he was in uniform running the show. That was where he met the likes of Tinubu. Tinubu was a senator under his sham diarchy arrangement. So those of us who knew what that period was, who lived through that process, knew that he never wanted to hand over power. So every other thing you heard was just, spicing the game so that people will be confused. Truth is that he transitioned from military rule in 1999, but Nigeria did not transition to democracy, and this should be easier for you to understand when you look at the kind of characters that took over from the military. So, military handed over, a military general in uniform handed over to a military general who was no longer in uniform but still answering to the military. Up till last 2 years, we had a military general in power in Nigeria. He was doing the same thing they were doing. And Nigeria is still firmly in the grip of the military. So the democracy that we transitioned into in 1999 is one I've often and publicly described as morontocracy. It's like, it was a government of morons, for morons, and by morons. After IBB annulled the June 12 election, on a Friday, I think a few weeks after annulling the June 12 election, in Mina, he went into a mosque to pray on a Friday. By the time he came out, somebody had stolen his shoes. And when the man was eventually apprehended, he said, a man who destroyed the future of a country does not deserve to be wearing, does not deserve a shoe or respect. And that he did that as a way of showing him disrespect. And I think there's a significance in taking somebody's shoes out of how many in a mosque for him. So those were Northerners who were opposed to him. But of course, over time, as it is clear with how they run the Nigerian system, how they confuse and obfuscate events, they started introducing ethnicity into it. And you can see, even in his book, he tried to introduce some ethnic dimension to it. Not June 12 alone, but some of the issues, which he did clearly to create division and confusion. That's IBB for you. He's always been like this. And like I said, we experienced his ruinous reign, for 8 years. So we know who he is, we know how he operates. That's his style. Nigerians are the kind of people who always pray, even when their prayers are answered, they are still on their knees. So we shouldn't, go that way. We should take our destinies into our hands